In today's podcast of Data for All, data literacy. Welcome to the Data for All podcast. I'm Charlie Pegian.
And I'm Charlie Yildy, where we want to empower you to think different with data.
And in today's podcast, we get to explore the real meaning of data literacy with a true expert in the field, might I add, Valerie Logan. And I got to know or meet Valerie back in 2021 at a summit where she was the keynote speaker. And when she started talking about data literacy and how this is really a passion of hers, I have been just dying to get her on this podcast ever since. And just to give you a little bit, and I'm going to let you, Valerie, of course, give most of your background, but you currently are at the Data Lodge, which is you are the founder of, but in the past you've worked at PwC, Knightsbridge, IBM. I get those. Am I on the right track here? HP. I'm not just making these up, right? These are literally the places you have worked, and you had a little stint at that place called Gartner. I don't know if anybody in the data world has ever heard of that.
I know about Gartner.
You've heard of Gartner. But I thought what was really cool about your days at Gartner was you did that CDO survey. What's CDO? That's Chief Data
Officer? CDO is Chief Data Officer.
That is really, really cool stuff. And not only that, but a lot of your research has been recognized, including winning the Top Thought Leadership Award across all Gartner's research in 2018. Charlie, that's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, and then in 2019, you went off and you founded the Data Lodge, which is, and I'm just going to read it because it's so perfectly said, your virtual home for data literacy. And most importantly, you are all in on helping organizations become data literate and get data literacy programs going. Did I do okay, Valerie? I'm blushing because I love, obviously, this topic, and I share in your advocacy.
You gonna let her talk now?
See, he's already starting.
This is a great conversation so far.
Well, it's because it's about you, right? And in the past, we're usually across the table from each other. And just so people know, if you're not seeing the video of this, Charlie is literally right next to me. So if you hear these grunts, it's because I'm punching him.
Yeah. So the answer to my question was no. He was not going to let you talk.
Exactly.
Well, you've got one more line, and I keep waiting for you to say it in our script.
What?
Valerie, I got him.
Valerie, welcome. When he said you're coming to us from the Data or you were coming from Data Lodge, I thought that's what you called your house. It was the Data Lodge.
You're onto something there. You didn't even know it. So our house is actually we call it Logan's Lodge.
Okay.
And it was the part of the inspiration for naming the business the Data Lodge. So the little story there. So I'm actually dialing in right now from Logan's Lodge, which, AKA the Data Lodge. And it's a house in a log cabin up in the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York, and where I grew up. And when I named the business the Data Lodge, it took me a long time to figure out what to call this company. I'm a first-time entrepreneur, by the way. Mm-hmm. And one day I was sitting on the screen porch talking to like nieces and nephews about life, because that's like my favorite thing to do on the screen porch. And I'm like, you know what? This is the vibe that I want with my clients. And so it's literally their virtual home for data literacy, pun intended.
Nice.
So we'd love to hear a little bit of how you got to the Data Lodge. And so whether there was a time in your life when, you were inspired in the data journey, or just in general. Who are you?
Yeah, I want to know.
Who am I? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, it all started in a cabin in the woods.
Yes, I love it. Go there. Yes.
So I was raised in the Adirondacks, and I was actually a really nerdy, shy math girl. People that see me present today would never think I was once quiet and shy. But I developed an affinity for math and was a really good listener and asked good questions. And so I think those seeds of communication and being interested in math were very early in my upbringing. And so I went off to college. I went to college for math, and I had a really important professor in my senior year of college. I can tell that story a little bit later if you like. And then I went off to grad school, applied math, and again, I was still shy at that point, but I went down to New Mexico State University for applied math, and I thought I was on a teaching assistantship, and I thought, all right, I'm going to be like in a tutoring lab, one-on-one with math students. Mm-hmm. And I got there and I was teaching 2 classrooms of introductory algebra to like the Aggie football players. And explaining introductory algebra to the Aggie football players it required what I didn't know was speaking a different language. And so that kind of was my entree into teaching and finding ways to translate things to people in a way that they understand. And with most of the football players, it was usually food. I would usually food analogies. So anyway, I did that, went off to my first job out of grad school was with a phone company called US West up in Seattle. And I was there 5 years, and that really was such a formative time in my career. I can come back and talk a little bit about that chapter. Mm-hmm. Then I went into consulting, went to Gartner, and now have my own company. So you can pick whatever you want out of that you want to dig into.
Well, I'd like to dive into one thing that you said there was a professor back when, because I do think one thing our audience likes is to know that everybody's journey is different. Mm-hmm. And there's always a pinnacle point. So when you mentioned that time with that one professor, was that one of those times?
It was.
Okay. Yeah, Tell us more.
An absolute juncture in my life.
He's a little biased too.
So imagine this. Go ahead.
I was saying he's a little biased too, actually being a professor. He's like, tell me about how people like me are great.
That's right. But in your case, we all have that time where somebody helped us focus, somebody helped put us on a different path. Tell us about yours.
Yeah. So I was at SUNY College of Buffalo, and I was finishing up my senior year at Buff State in math. I had a professor named Dr. James Geiker, and my last semester I could do an independent study. And so he said, well, he was my mentor also. He said, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. And he said, how about looking into like applied math? And I'm like, because at that point I was thinking I was going to be a teacher or an actuary. Okay. That was like my destination with a math degree. And so he taught me this, it helped me to look at linear programming. Question?
What's an actuary?
Oh.
Person who conducts the underwriting analysis in an insurance company to determine the risk ratios and rates.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Insurance made it math and data people, essentially. Thank you for clarifying. So he said, do you want to do an applied math independent study? And he said, there's this thing called operations research, which is essentially how do you optimize anything? And I had learned a little bit of linear programming in linear algebra in his classes. So I went on to code this little program. Back in the day, it was APL, a programming language, like way back in the day. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I need you to pick an example of something that you want to optimize that we can feed some data into. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, that was so foreign to me. I didn't even know what he meant by optimizing. And he said, something that you want to figure out, like how much of one thing or another do you have to do to get the right outcome? And so I went to food because I love food. And I actually had always struggled with my weight. And so I was like, kind of interested in that. And so what we did is we created an optimization problem around nutrition. And I was listening to your podcast on data and nutrition. So I thought that episode was brilliant.
Thank you.
So what I did is I did this, I fed in, so the data sources were the nutrition labels on products. So, a can of tomato soup, I'm putting in the different items, then I'm optimizing for, nutritional value, essentially. Well, when I first ran the model, you know how it feels when you are programming and the first time the model runs without errors?
Yes.
It was like such a moment.
Yeah.
Yes,
But
I
what
do.
it did is it told me I should eat 400 carrots, like 4 cans of tomato soup, and like, I don't know, 17 slices of celery or something. And it was that moment when I'm like, first of all, I was excited it ran, but then it was the tuning of that. And it was the first time, you guys, that I really saw the power of math and data and applying math.
Yeah.
So the rest of the story goes, that's not where it ends. The rest of the story was, he said to me, that's great, and I'm like, okay, I'm done with my senior year. And he says, okay, now you get to present your findings. And I said, what do you mean present my findings? And he said, well, in order to get credit, you need to present at the research symposium.
Oh.
And I said, what are you talking about? I'm a shy.
I was going to say, you're still the shy little mathematician,
It was
right?
all his plan. It was his scheme. And so that began preparation for presenting my research at the Buff State Research Symposium. And I had, back in the day, they were those plastic foils that you put on that hot machine.
Absolutely.
Right on the screen.
Transparencies.
Yeah. Anyone under like 30 is like Google searching that right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so that morning, I was so sick to my stomach. I think I literally got sick. I was just so mortified. I'm like, I just got to get through this. And I went to the front of the room. It was this big, like, amphitheater. There was all these professors. And I'm like, oh, this is just mortifying. I get to the front. I tell the story in like 20 minutes. And the audience did what you did. When I said 400 carrots and 12 slices of celery, they laughed.
Yeah.
And it was that moment that I'm like, maybe this isn't as bad as I thought. And so I got back to my seat. I was just glad it was done. And Dr. Geiger leaned over to me and he said, you're going to go far.
Nice.
It was a really powerful moment. So that was a really key moment. I also won the research, the award for the research. It was the only time the math group had ever won a research award. But thank you, Dr. Geiger. That was an incredibly powerful moment. And I was able to give the commencement speech at Buff State and honor him years later.
That's awesome.
Valerie, thank you for sharing that. We have so many people that have stories where it all kind of started, but you did say there was 2 stories. Was the second one also a pivotal point in your career?
Yeah, I didn't. Of course, you don't realize these things at the time.
Sure.
It's only with reflection and perspective and hindsight that these dots get connected in one's life. So the other story, I guess I'd like to share, just it may be just good perspective for others, is so after grad school, after helping the Aggie football players graduate with their algebra class, I went to work at US West, phone company up in Seattle. And so I thought I was being hired on as an outside plant engineer, and they liked my math background. So I get there and I think, all right, I'm going to be in a ivory tower in Seattle, and I'm going to have a big CAD cam set up, and it's going to be just all grand. And instead I got there and everybody's in jeans, and they said, here's your hard hat, here's your orange safety vest. And I was, of course, wearing a lovely fuchsia blazer and a green skirt because it was my first day of employment. And they're like, no, you need to get some jeans. And I was like, okay, I didn't know I was going to be doing this. So I literally, in those first 2 years, what they did in the phone company was they indoctrinated college students in operations, in network and operations, to learn telephony. And at the time, I was like, this isn't what I thought I was going to be doing. But now that I look back, those first 2 years were incredibly formative in understanding how does a phone work, right? What is the underground conduit? I was, designing how to take down telephone poles and put in fiber routes. So I did all of that for a couple of years. And the people that were 30-year veterans of the phone company that I worked with were so kind to me and supportive of me. And so I then got promoted into a role in Denver. These suits from Denver came in one day and they interviewed me for this role in Denver, which was headquarters. I had no idea what it was for. The organization was called Processes. What does that mean? So I received this role in corporate in this processes team, and they liked the math background. So I show up there, and do you guys know what it would be? It would be the mid-90s. organization called processes. Any idea what it might be?
Hang on, mid-90s processes, like I'm just going to guess the way you connect one end of a phone connection to another.
Good guess. Close. It's actually how do you connect one end of a process to another? It's process reengineering.
Okay.
So it was the whole Michael Hammer days, process control. And I had no idea they were reinventing the whole company, redesigning the whole company. And they were in 14 states, like 520 work centers. So in those 3 years, I was part of the team that was building the enterprise data management and enterprise data warehouse and the daily performance measurement associated with this whole, overhaul of the organization. And the reason I mention that is in today's data literacy, it's really about understanding the business process, the data, and the analytics. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize how formative it was for me to be part of a processes organization because I learned about enterprise strategy, business strategy. I learned about process management. I learned about enterprise data. I learned about performance management. Yeah. And most importantly, I learned about change management because the decisions that were being made in Denver in the ivory tower in corporate were talking about my friends that had helped me in my first 2 years of my career out in the field. And so to this day, guys, I mean, that is still such a lens for me to look at. And it's also, I look at people and it's like, if you haven't had a role in a business process, I think it's hard to grasp. What does that really mean?
It is. It's a lot of, like I do mentoring for a program here in town called Elite, where we take the hard skill set folks and train them up on the soft skill sets. And it's like, sure, you may be a good individual contributor, but you have no idea what it takes to get somebody else to do their job, not just in a satisfactory way, but to get them to a point to where they're also innovating as well. Like your job changes instantly. It goes from what it was to people, and that's it.
And you think about all of the aspects of a data person. You've got to have math background. Sometimes if you're a data scientist, you have to have this, programming. But the hard part is getting that business acumen. And what better way than, first of all, getting dirty for the first couple of years, and then being part of every process within an organization gives you a different perspective, doesn't it, on what is data and how it can be used.
Absolutely. And some of the best data scientists that I'm aware of have taken the time to go sit in a call center operation, go ride with a driver, go work in the store. Right? It really is. If anyone's watching that's a new data scientist or a data engineer, go ask to go and hang out with the operations teams.
I have a buddy that works for a data science team in retail. And he said that's the very first thing you do is you go, you spend time on locations, you see how everything works. Like you pick up the vocabulary, and then you bring that back. And to your point, when you're designing the new processes and making them connect, you're like, okay, well, this person can't. You'll know more about what they can and can't do, and you're less likely to just dump crap on them at any given time.
Yeah. Your story about showing up with the fancy thing. My first day on the job after graduating, and I went into the auto industry. And so, this was late 90s. So, the shirts were a little bit on the puffier side. I had the big pleated pants, the light pants, the white shirt, the tie. And I walked into a manufacturing facility and they said, "You leave." And I was like, huh? And it was... because I was at that point a hazard because of all the loose fitting clothes, the tie. And this was a facility where I could have been injured if it caught on something. And after that, I bought a lot of polo shirts and khakis. And that's what that was my dress in the auto industry way back then.
The staff there probably have side bets in like the break room. Like, what are the new hires going to show up in? Oh
man, they're looking at that. They were just brutal to me. The car industry in Detroit back in the late 90s, it was a pretty toxic environment. And so I was definitely part of that thing. So my indoctrination into processes was from the manufacturing side. a little bit. So it sounds like that last story really made you go from a math person to a data person. I have to ask you this because I ask people, but I really want to know your answer. What is data? What is data? When we talk about data, we talk about data literacy, we talk about all these. What is data to you?
I'll be honest with you. I have been really thinking long and hard about this because I think it's really shifting. And
okay.
I used to say, there's this classic kind of religious debate of, is it data or is it information? And well, is it, does it have context and all, or is it information or is it knowledge? And there's all these kind of, and I actually think that's a red herring. I don't think that's the point we should be looking at. I actually think that data is anything that is, it's a representation of it's like almost like a periodic table of elements represents the elements of our physical world. Yep. I think data is really an element that represents our worlds through digital form.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And I'm shifting that way because so many people, part of data literacy is helping people to really widen their aperture of what did they think data is, and so many people think data has to live in a spreadsheet or data has to come from a system. And that's, of course, internal structured data, spreadsheets, of course, that's data. But a picture on your phone, a text on a social media message or on a direct message, the streaming on your home camera, these are all data now. And I'm like, well, how can I describe what that really is? And the only thing I can think of is it's really an element that is representing and that you want to be able to convey, communicate, process for understanding.
Love it.
So I'm still working on that. I don't know what you think.
I like the approach because it's like we're always finding new elements. Some elements come in and out of existence, so it fits from a malleability perspective, and then it's just like I think it also represents like the 118 or however many there are now. Like a bunch of different points equal, a representation of life, and so if 118 elements represent all of life, I think that's a good analogy worth pursuing. Is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had these kind of conversations with somebody, Valerie, that Zach Gemignani from Juice Analytics, good friend.
Zach.
Oh, you know Zach?
Yeah, that's how.
Zach's the one that got me to the Nashville Summit.
Cool.
I would have assumed so because he's been very involved in the Analytics Summit, and then I think he got us connected afterwards a little bit, and then but when we've talked about this, it's always we're just trying to capture reality at that moment. And store it or process it or do something with it. And so that's when I came from my previous school, MTSU, to Belmont, well, Belmont's it's got music business, the arts, it's got, things. So to relate to people there, I can't talk columns and rows. And so then it became the definition was a capturing of an imperfect view of reality. And because data is not perfect. And that really, I stole it from Zach, I have to admit. But the imperfect part is what I really have kind of grabbed onto because, it's once you figure that out, you can make better decisions because either you have to go, you just have to accept what it is. And data's messy. Yeah. It's incomplete. It's a proxy for reality. It's not reality. And so, and I noticed you do what I do is I say data is because data to me is a concept more than it is columns and rows.
Oh yeah. We actually had a question on one of the episodes. Is it data is or data are? Yeah. And I had no idea that discussion existed before that. And it was quite entertaining to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've had a lot of
going there, right?
Yeah. Well, I've had a lot of professors that'll send me, messages, excuse me, but I noticed you said data is, and I just want to correct you. And I'm like, let me correct you. When I'm talking about a data set, I will consider it plural. But when I'm talking about data as a concept, it's a little different.
So he's getting fired up.
Yeah, I always do.
Yeah, I see that.
Talk about that. All right. So go ahead.
I do have to do a shout out to Zach. So Zach wrote the book Data Fluency.
He did?
Back in the day. that preceded my work on data literacy. He, to this day, was one of the formative influences on the research I did at Gartner. He really had represented so much of what I had believed and observed, and he's just such a pioneer, and I just want to do a shout out to Zach.
That's worth saying.
Stop. Everybody, we're cutting that part out. There's no way I'm giving that man. Zach is a dear friend, and I think I 100% agree with you. What I always tell Zach is he's always 10 years ahead of everybody else.
That's true.
And Data Fluency is a 10-year-old book, and it's still relevant today.
Totally.
It's more relevant today. And back then, we're like, what is he talking about? And then...
Totally.
Well, so you were talking about working in telecom in the mid-'90s and building those original databases. Like he was talking about when he wrote that book, that's transitioning off of those legacy systems is going to be difficult, but we've got to do it. And I don't know if you know this, you probably do, but they're still there. Like, and companies are just now realizing, like, oh, so we've got to take that data and put it in the cloud, but then make it work with our other data. Yeah, it's not built for that. So they're just now getting to like basically the outline of his book from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. It's amazing. When I was a Gartner analyst, I used to describe this whole data management phenomenon as there was such a collect philosophy, like, oh, we have to collect all the data. And it really has shifted to this blend of like collect and connect. Mm-hmm. Like there's no way you can collect it all.
Right.
You have to like collect some of it, but then you're going to connect to it.
Yes.
So I think that shift in paradigm is important too, because a lot of people still have that enterprise data warehouse mindset. Like we're going to collect everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
I work with, I work on the mobility side. So I partner with a lot of telecom companies, or telecom vendors and whatnot. And so we've seen a much more consolidated approach to that aggregation of data, and they're doing it a lot of the times behind ServiceNow. And so they're putting it all in one spot, and then but they're starting to make the hires. They're hiring the data scientists, or at least the more skilled data analysts, and then they're starting to lean into them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you said that you're doing work in the data literacy world, and I know the Data Lodge is really that is the focus there. So let's go into data literacy, and if you could, again, we never want to assume that people know exactly what we mean when we say these terms, because our mission with Data for All is truly to get everybody up to a certain level. So,
sorry, there is a wasp that just fell from the ceiling onto his keyboard.
Can you hear it?
I heard it.
You heard it? And it's been buzzing above us forever, but it just died?
I don't know what.
Did you see American Idol this year? American Idol, one of the contestants actually had a wasp like land on his forehead.
Oh, there it goes.
Did it go away, or? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it went away.
Yeah, but now it's still going to be there.
Well, as long as it doesn't fall on your keyboard again.
It's so loud. Oh, geez, that's hilarious.
Are we going to have like outtakes?
Yes, that one
we can.
I should have had a bigger leave that on there. It landed on my keyboard.
He talked for 30 seconds while he had a wasp dancing on his keyboard.
And I'm deathly allergic to wasps.
Oh, are you?
I mean, like, oh yeah, yeah. Like we would stop and I'd go to the hospital if that thing hits me. So I will.
Shit.
That's okay. There's no way we're gonna get it, and if we do, it's gonna sting me. So let's just keep
I can't
going.
believe that he. I'd have been flipping out.
It landed right on my keyboard.
I don't want to be the guest that was responsible for you going to the hospital. Because that's the narrative that would be told. You know this.
Jeremy.
We just got this sent to us. I'll just sit here like this from now.
Yeah. Do keep it.
Oh, what? Don't worry. It's not going anywhere.
I just don't want you to hit me with it when you grab it up real quick.
Wouldn't it be funny? It just lands right here. What do you?
Oh, I'll hit it for you. Don't worry about it.
No, it wouldn't. I'm just glad I'm not there.
We're having such a good day. And don't worry, the text message from my wife, by the way, was that there's strong storms coming.
Okay.
So we'll.
Oh, great.
We'll either get stung by a wasp, or
Mother Nature's just coming at us right now.
Yeah, it is. So all right, we had the data literacy transition, and I'm just going to go back to saying it before that.
But you're going to get to why do you care about data literacy? Like, that's what I want to know.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've hinted at data literacy, and that is what the Data Lodge is based on. We don't want to assume everybody knows exactly what we mean when we say that, but what is your definition of data literacy, and also, why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, so if you didn't prompt a definition, I would have given you one anyway.
Good.
Because if you Google search data literacy, you will get 17,000 definitions, right?
Okay.
It is a hot term, it is a confusing term, and depending on the perspective that one takes, they have their own view of it. So I love starting with a definition.
Okay.
So first of all, the way I like to define data literacy at the Data Lodge with my clients is just like any literacy, it's the ability to read, write, and communicate. That part's pretty basic, but it's read, write, and communicate with data. That's the object. In context. In context is very key, because what Charlie does in mobility and what a store clerk at a big grocery chain versus a driver experience data in incredibly different ways. So read, write, and communicate with data in context in both work and life. Okay. So I do not believe that this is just a work thing.
Absolutely.
I know it's not just a work thing.
Yeah.
It is a life skill. If interpreting the Johns Hopkins dashboard during COVID and the misinterpretation of the Johns Hopkins dashboard and the lack of understanding of a 7-day moving average, if that did not convince people that data literacy is a thing, they might not have known what to call it, but it is a work and a life skill. So that's like the one-liner. And then I like to say, okay, well, what does that include? Like, how do you actually foster data literacy? I've boiled it down to 3 things. It's mindset, it's language, and it's skills.
Okay. So
mindset being attitudes and beliefs, language being, do you understand the terms? Think about data scientists and data engineers and business people hanging out in a room solving a problem. You do a word cloud over those people. There's 3 sets of terms. There's business acumen, there's data acumen, and there's analytical acumen. Any problem you're solving. So knowing the basic vocabulary. And then the third piece is the skills. Skills like, they're basically 3. Thinking, how do we think? So when someone puts on Facebook a chart that, gets your blood pressure going, are you a discerning consumer where you step back and you say, I wonder what the source of that is? Or do you immediately start texting back or messaging back and piling on? Right? Yeah. So being a critical thinker and a discerning consumer is thinking. Engaging is how do you interact with other people, like data storytelling. That's a great example of engaging. And then applying is, at the end of the day, what actions are you taking with that data to derive the value? So those actions have to weigh things like ethics, bias. How do you make a data-informed decision? Yeah. So mindset, language, skills. Let me stop. What do you think? Where do you want to dig in?
I want to go to the person first, and then we maybe go out from there, because if I hear that, that sounds that is what it is, and I love that you put it into context of data literacy doesn't stop at the the door when you leave work. Just like I think one of the things you probably liked about our Data in Nutrition podcast is we were literally talking about our data literacy in terms of our nutrition and how we use data to make better decisions. And it's hard. It's hard to even just do that. So let's bring it down to the person. So if you were to say you're data literate, what would that be?
So
or levels, or do you see it as levels, or do you see everybody has to get to a certain point? What does it look like? If I said I'm data literate, or I want to be data literate, what does it mean?
So I would basically say, first off, that you have an open and curious mindset about how data is in our worlds. You understand that there is a certain language and set of terms and that basically there are terms related to problems, terms related to data, and terms related to this analysis math stuff. You need to just understand that basic frame for there's these kinds of terms, and I can have a mental model for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then third, the skills, you would be a discerning consumer of information, and you would engage with other people productively. So that to me, I know that sounds very clinical the way I just described it, but at the end of the day, my friends and family, I know that they have a higher degree of data literacy if, first of all, they see the world through data glasses. They know that data is not just a spreadsheet. They know that that picture they're taking, that message they're posting, that camera stream on their home, that is all data. They're aware of that. They lean into it. They're open and curious about it. And they're open to, when they see an analysis presented, when they're watching the news, they're not impulsively reacting.
Yeah, I love that
They're discerning.
You went to, you didn't say you had to be a programmer. You didn't say go take a bunch of stat courses. You said first you started with the appreciation of data. And then it's when you do see it. And that's my data literacy term. I never will tell somebody, especially in a university environment, if I'm going to make everybody at a university data literate, that doesn't mean you have to create the visual, but you have to be able to see the visual and make it rational decisions or use it in a way that is productive. And I think that is key. And I'm so glad to hear that is where you started. And do you feel like that's a floor? And then from there, there's levels, or how do you see it?
Yeah. So this is a really, I know we're starting at these basic concepts, but honestly, it's the most critical gift we can give. So first off, I believe that data literacy, there is no such thing as being data illiterate, unless you're living under a rock or in a cave. So if you drive a car, you are data literate, unless you're getting tickets all the time and running out of fuel or
That's true.
So when you look at a dashboard, you are processing data and making a data-informed decision.
Okay. So
when you are picking your roster on Sunday morning or Thursday night or whenever fantasy football people pick their rosters, that is data. You are making data-informed decisions on your roster. So I think we need to bring the fear and the fear factor of this down and say this is more accessible and more relatable than we give credit to, and everyone has a degree of data literacy. If we start there, then we can build up. The second point about that is there's a lot of folks. I don't know what a lot is. There's some folks who are really against the term data literacy.
Okay.
Why do you think that is, Charlie's? Why do you think they're against the term data literacy?
Yeah, Charlie.
Why would somebody be against the term data literacy? Probably because they want to keep people in an out group, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't have the right answer at all. So, but I would probably go to literacy. Almost has a negative connotation to it a little bit. What are you hearing?
I like both your. I like both your answers. Those are
mine's better than
really
his though, right?
Yeah.
Just checking. The other Charlie, which
no comment.
Yeah,
no comment.
So I am curious as to why somebody would actually think that was negative.
Yeah. So I have very intentionally chosen to keep the term data literacy as the foundation. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to explain why.
Okay.
So when people have that reaction, I'm offended by the term data literacy. First of all, it's usually data and analytics people that bring that up.
Yeah.
It's not the store clerk in,
I could have
the
guessed
grocery
that.
store. It's the professionals who are like, oh, that's beneath me. But I digress. So the term data literacy, I believe, again, everybody has a degree of data literacy. And if we start with fluency, because that's the alternate. A lot of people say, oh, well, why don't we use fluency?
Yeah.
Well, that may sound nice, and people may be like, oh, we're adopting and developing data fluency. But if you go to that frontline operations call center rep, or you go to that store clerk, or you go to that driver, and you say to them, we're here from corporate, and we're going to make you data fluent. they're going to be equally freaking out.
Yes.
Because they're going to be like, I don't want to be a data scientist.
Mm-hmm.
I hated math. Why do I have to do IT stuff? So my message is there's 3 basic levels. Let's keep it really simple.
Mm-hmm.
Literacy is the common denominator.
Okay.
Fluency is the next level up. If you want to drive to a level of fluency, great. And then mastery is the next level, where you're going to have your real experts in the field.
Yeah, we talked about
just
that,
like any language.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think it's bad to have German literacy, or let's say Spanish literacy. I'm going to Barcelona for a couple weeks. I need conversational Spanish. Okay, I don't feel embarrassed about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so. I look at it. Mine's in terms of, think of it for undergraduate students, and I've created 4 levels. And so I assume you have nothing, but of course, like you said, we all have a certain level of data literacy. But so we put it as awareness first. So we just want to make you aware that data is important and get you to appreciate it. Literacy to us is that idea of you should be able to see it and know how to read the results, do something with it. And then we go to proficiency and fluency, because I think my definition of fluency is going to be the same as yours. Mine's at the undergrad level. If you are that undergrad data science major or something, you're fluent, but to say you're a master at that point is probably not accurate. And I haven't even included the mastery one in my thoughts, again, because we're mostly an undergraduate university at Belmont. But that makes sense. And so for me, proficiency goes to the people that can create visuals or create a pivot chart even. And, but I do it so that nobody wants to be, what I've noticed at the university level is nobody wants to just have their students be data literate. They all want them to be more. And so everybody at least wants proficiency. And I'm like, great. All right, here's what it's going to take to get there. And, but it's okay if you just want literacy. And,
So here's how I'm trying to address that. So we haven't talked about it yet, but the way that I approach developing literacy is I think you have to have a methodology that scales, that's consistent and standard. Everybody just kind of winging it and sort of talking about this loosely isn't going to scale. So I created years ago something called ISL, Information as a Second Language, built off of the English as a Second Language model. Because if English can be adopted as a universal language or consistent language, maybe we could do the same with information. So if I was to say, like when I'm teaching workshops, people will go and put into their LinkedIn profile after the workshop under languages, they'll say English, Spanish, and data/ISL. So if ISL was like level 1, almost like green belt, black belt in Six Sigma, if it didn't say data literacy, if it was like, I have ISL certification level 1, and that is literacy, or I have ISL level 2 certification, that's fluency. And you do that by domain. So I could be a level 3 in telecom, but I've never worked in a hospital.
Sure.
So maybe I'm not even level 1. Right. So then those are the dialects of the language is what I like to say.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I think some of it is giving it some kind of certification and credential that has a degree of consistency.
I don't necessarily disagree with the certification or credential part of it, but because that's an excellent way to establish like the floor. But we take the approach, like, because we're both engaged with an organization here in the NTC, is like that should be a part of the education, as a standard. And so we spent time this year, like talking about that, because Tennessee's got this new computer science like initiative in high school where everybody's going to graduate with, with a certain amount of hours of computer science stuff. And that's new for us, but they're changing the curricula going back all the way to elementary school to say, okay, well, instead of using this analogy that has like teddy bears, you'll use this analogy that has a tablet and then these other aspects to it. And so that's where you introduce that vocabulary piece. And so you're saying that with the ISL stuff, like you've already kind of determined like what the first level would be?
Yeah, I call it the 20 data literacy essentials.
That's
it goes
cool.
across that mindset, language, and skills, because people want to know, like, what's the beginning level? What does that include? And if we don't put definition to that and vet it and determine that as a standards body, then everybody's just making it up.
I don't disagree with that. Like we do a lot of knowledge-based management.
I like what you said though, Charlie. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, if you don't standardize the conversation, you're not going to be able to scale it, which is what you said earlier, and I 100% agree.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to. I like what Charlie said. We don't need that part. So, but I'm assuming what you liked is I love also that we're doing it early. And we're making it where data is just. Nothing against us, Valerie, but are you going to need a data advocate in 20 years? You don't need computer advocates today like you did 20 years ago.
Right.
So we just want it to become part of the fabric of society, this way to embrace and appreciate data, so that data literacy at a certain level that we consider literacy today might be, not even what we think of it in a few years, especially with, of course, the advancements that we're seeing so rapidly, obviously in the AI space and everywhere else.
Yeah.
So I was having a conversation. Sorry, Charlie.
No, go for it.
I was having a conversation yesterday about exactly that. Like, when does this become so ingrained and pervasive and invisible that it's just part of the fabric of how we learn and develop and grow? I do think that is where this is going, and probably more rapidly than we even think. But I think when we're talking about a lot of times people say one of the needs around data literacy is we need more people to make good data informed decisions. Mm-hmm. They shouldn't have to come to the data analyst or the BI developer and say, can you run this analysis for me? They should be able to self-serve and have that conversation on their own. That is definitely one of the values of data literacy is that broader upskilling.
Absolutely.
But we also are just improving collaboration. So one of the biggest issues we see is the hoarding of data between departments. Mm-hmm. Well, part of that is, maybe some people are being jerks and they're hoarding data, like not nicely, but I think it's more people are being stewards and protecting that data because they don't know that other people know how to use it and what to do with it. Yep. If you foster a shared level of data literacy around that shared asset, then you can have responsible usage and you can open up that sharing where appropriate.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of those collaboration issues that one of the roots is people just not sharing a common language around how they're going to use that data.
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head too, because your first response to something that's either change or unknown is fear. And so I agree with you that it's stewarding is more likely than something nefarious, but it doesn't change the fact that it still happens. And I do believe that as professionals, at the very least, we'll have to have some sort of acumen around data to be able to interact with it on our own. Because the way we have BI dashboards set up to easily. You can easily manage people, processes, and almost every aspect of the business from a dashboard. And if you know how, but you got to know how to use it. And so I feel it's already standard, and we're just building up this is inevitable, basically.
It is.
Yeah. Can I bring you back to the mindset? Because you mentioned the mindset, and what do you see there? Because I mean, it's literally in our tagline. We want you to think different with data is really about a mindset approach to data, and I've got a lot of thoughts on that, but I want to hear what you think mindset is first, and then. And see if what I think is similar or whatever, but please share what you think.
Yeah, I'd love to riff on this a little bit because I certainly have my angle. So when I think of mindset in the context of data literacy, I think what are people's? It's fear, it's curiosity, it's a gift when people say something like, I'm not a data person, because they're actually giving you insight into what their thought process is. So I think you lean into that and you meet them where they are with that mindset. So it's things like, I'm not a data person. It's that's an IT thing. That doesn't relate to me. So a lot of times mindset will manifest as these limiting beliefs, I would say, is a way to describe it. And so having an engagement strategy to be able to address the mindset. And because here's the thing, a lot of people think data literacy is set up a training academy and you're done.
Yeah.
Well, it's a piece of it, but who's going to go take those training courses if they don't even think it's relevant,
right,
or they're scared to death of it? So I think you have to walk through the mindset door before you're even going to get people to be interested in any of the development projects.
Well, yeah, but the difference being that now it's a requirement. Like there's not if you want to learn this stuff. There's like it's when or if you do it all before you exit the workforce.
Yeah, and a lot of my mindset part lately has been going to what is truly actionable, because I'm seeing a lot of companies that can make dashboards. They've got 3,000 dashboards created by their employees, and they feel that maybe 2 of them are actually worth a darn. But what they're really frustrated is they'll get into meetings and they leave and they feel like nothing's happened. And I actually just did a training for a company here in town, and I made them do data storytelling. And they had to get up in front and give me, based on a data set, and give us their actionable conclusions. And I kept hearing the word explore or do more data stuff. And I finally had to play the act of the CIO and say, all right, did you just come here and present in front of me as the CIO, again, I'm playing that role, and tell me that you got to go do more work? Or are you giving me a recommendation? What's actionable? What am I going to do after I leave this room? And it's just, that mindset is so different. It's when you're a data person, all you want to do is go get more data. All you want to do is go explore more. All you want to do is create the next visual. What you don't do, which is the hard part, is really take that data and figure out what's actionable and then follow through to action, which we all know is really hard. And so, this idea of a visualization is data storytelling. No, it's not. No.
Right.
Data storytelling is an opportunity to create a conversation that really leads to a result. And, and so every time I talk about mindset now, people are like, it's almost like I'm talking a foreign language to them. So that's where my mindset part goes to. I know when it's holistic for an organization, it's probably a little bit different, but people are coming to me now because they want action. They want value out of their data. And that's the hard part.
Building off of that, we all know those people who are just brilliant at getting to the clear and compelling point.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of people who like dance around it. And then you have somebody in the room that's like, yeah, so what you're saying is this, and we just need to do this. And everybody's like, yeah, we've been in this meeting for an hour and you just kind of summarize the whole thing. Yes. That's what we want. We want those people that can just get to the point, right? What's the essence of the narrative? And then what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Move on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, if you could bottle that and sell it, I'm telling you, it is interesting. I know, Charlie, you've got it where, again, Charlie here is, I always like to make fun of him, but I'm sitting next to a CEO here, somebody that runs an organization. What are you seeing when you think of mindset within the organization?
It's the same type of stuff. So you're talking about change, like aspects of change management earlier. Like we took so at G Squared, everybody starts at the bottom. Like every single employee there started as an entry level agent, and then we build the people up by giving them the skill sets. And so when somebody joins the organization, they get 16 weeks of like mobility training, and so we make them mobile experts. Wow. Then if they want to go up to like more like higher soft skill set requirement type jobs like external communication and stuff, we'll train them again, and then we build the people up. But what that does is that creates an openness because we're all speaking the same language. And so in the teens and whatnot, when we transitioned to a data centric approach, like we still had the folks who were just, they would just by default dig their heels in. Like, this is not going to happen because it's different than it was or than what we're currently doing. And, sometimes we were able to talk through those and sometimes not. I was still young to my leadership career at the time. And so I'm not going to say I navigated those waters perfectly, but we got stuff done. We standardized in a way that allowed us to scale. But always, there was a fear-induced response to the change. And once we alleviated that fear response through conversation and knowledge, it allowed us to open things up. And so that's over the series of podcasts that we've had so far, like we're talking about subjects, we're reintroducing those subjects, and the intent is to over time build that same vocabulary that then opens the data mindset to everybody listening, hopefully.
Yeah, I got to say, I really respect that approach. I mean, that takes real leadership commitment to commit to that kind of development, and to really stick to that.
It's difficult.
I don't know any way to shortcut developing that shared language.
Yeah. Everybody knows what everybody does, and that helps out a lot. And then, so going into the pandemic, we went remote 100% in less than 48 hours. Everybody was able to maintain the work volume that they were doing before. We were able to adapt our processes from the in-person to the remote to where we could, we built the lead metrics around our positions for a reason, so we could monitor productivity through data. And so that worked. And then getting home and making those changes was a lot less stressful because we had invested that time in our people.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I just love that approach,
as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always admired the way, when he says it's hard, I hear it in his voice a lot of times, and some of his principles, even ones about the way you sit within the organization. You're very humble about it, by the way. This will never happen again, me giving him a compliment. But I really do respect the way he
You're
leads
gonna cut
an
that
organization.
out, aren't you?
No. This is going to be a YouTube thing because I really do think the way that he leads is that right approach. It's by example first, and in practice, and then down. And so.
Yeah, I've learned from poor example, like what not to do. So I love learning hard lessons. Don't get me wrong, but there's some lessons that I've managed to get out of others and save myself a lot of hardship.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've got a lot of different things that we could go off. I do want to know when you say skills, what is a skill? So and do you teach skills during a data literacy program?
Engagement.
Yes.
Yeah. So couple things there. So first on the skills, really that is any application of how does this come alive, right? In how people think, how people interact, and how people take an action. So that's what I mean by skills. And I've got it broken down into like 12 discrete skills, and then there's specific things that go with it. But that's what I mean by skills, essentially. Okay. As far as what I do at the Data Lodge, I am all in on helping people build a data literacy program. I don't necessarily go out and teach every one of those 12 skills to the entire workforce. I'm a train the trainer model. Yeah. So I am all about those program leads and helping them build a comprehensive data literacy program. And then I help them shop the marketplace of providers like the learning management systems and the different consulting companies and the data storytelling providers. And I say, okay, if you're trying to do this kind of skill development, here's a short list of who really would be phenomenal to bring in on that.
Gotcha.
So
does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Or very much so.
So is training the trainer a lesson you learned the hard way, or has it always been your approach? Because training trainers is, for those listening, drastically different than training the we'll call them the users in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's really a question about my business model.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk about that, but when I started the Data Lodge in the end of 2019, I'd done all this research and had given advice to CDOs on data literacy programs. But the CDOs were coming to me and they're like, love the theory, but we need help building these things. The challenge for me was I didn't want to build a consulting organization because I have this basic philosophy that says you don't change culture from the outside.
Okay.
So for me to be like, okay, I'm going to come change you, because I think this is a culture thing. It's not just a training thing. So, but then the conundrum for the CDOs is, okay, they put somebody in charge of a data literacy program. There's no resources or best practices or methods out there. It's a brand new thing.
Absolutely.
So I decided to build my business model so that I have 3 offerings of how I help. ABC. So advisory, boot camp, and community. My boot camps are train the trainer, and I do that to teach them how to stand up a program, and then I provide a community of them to get together as they're implementing their programs, and they can share their experiences, and I support them as they're implementing. Very different business model than classic, services for organizations, but it's been successful so far.
Nice.
Yeah, we and we're trying. I don't know if you've ever worked with universities, but we're trying the same thing, and thinking of how can every student be data literate. Am I going to train 8,942 students, or do we have to go after the faculty? Which, by the way, the faculty at our school is very willing to learn, and that's been great to have that. So we're taking the faculty approach and really going after them, creating a community first, and getting people to want to be part of a data revolution, or we don't say it that way, but that's the way I feel like, that's the approach I think we're taking. And so, like you said, you infiltrate from the inside, get your champions and good stories internally, and maybe it happens. And that is, I think, the only way. Because otherwise you're going to be really tired, Valerie, if you have to teach everyone.
I know.
I
know. Exactly.
One thing I would like you to expand. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
One thing I would like you to expand on is that culture piece, because what do you mean? What do you mean by the culture as it pertains to the data stuff?
So culture and data. So culture, when I think about the culture that has to support data being respected and leveraged and to foster data literacy, I think it goes to what is the leadership belief and direction in the organization. Because if the senior leaders are not modeling strong data literacy and advocating and actively championing for this work, that's going to be counterproductive, right? So I think part of it is leadership, is part of culture. Secondly, it's community. So how do people interact and support each other as the fabric? And part of culture is language. Yeah. So how do people interact if they don't have a shared language? So, you can go into the clinical definitions of culture around values and beliefs and all of that plays. But to me, it's about, you've got to seed this bottom up, grassroots plus top down with the leaders. Yeah. You've got to give them a shared language. You've got to make it explicit with mindset. And then you've got to give them a method to be able to actually scale this and deliver it. So that's what I mean by culture. I'm not a what do you call it? An anthropologist of corporate organizations. No. So
that's exactly what I was getting at, because there's knowing all of those things builds your ability to trust what the data says. And a culture that is not data literate will inherently make poor decisions, because they may spit in the face of what data is telling them directly. And that happens inevitably. And sometimes you learn hard lessons from that. But if it's a data literate culture, like you said, especially with the leadership, then when they hear all of these terms, then they're processing that into actual, or like what is closer to like actually going to happen, as opposed to just making up something because the boundaries or the metrics that you're using, and they're less amorphous and more like more solid if you're a data literate person, I guess, if that makes sense. And so you trust what you're seeing.
You hit on a really important point, which is, again, a lot of people think we're driving a data literacy program to, alleviate all the pull on report and dashboard people saying, oh, well, we want everybody to be self-service. But you're hitting on a really important point, which is, how do you foster trust around data if people don't understand the data, right? And the use of the data and the context. So we've had, probably a decade or more of data governance programs, which, you know how it is. You get invited to the data governance program and the data stewardship meetings. You're like, what did I do wrong? Why do I have to go do that? I mean, people hate those meetings classically. But if you reframe data governance as you are actually the people who are going to be crafting and articulating the shared language of this organization around data. Because what are the work products of a governance program? They're a data catalog, they're a business glossary, and they're a data dictionary. Well, guess what? How do you have a shared language if you don't have a defined glossary and dictionary? So, you can reframe the whole governance work. Instead of it being, oh, I got to go define all these terms, you can say, no, I'm actually part of crafting our shared language. It's pretty powerful. A lot of interdependencies there. So I love that you brought up trust.
We've had that conversation with others on the podcast as well. It's like, do you appreciate living in the now where you get to, you get to be the person who names those terms, or would you rather live in 20 years where it's just given to you?
Yeah.
And I bet, Valerie, what do you think? Do you like, think about your path. I'm assuming, we kind of said this before we started today. It probably was not linear in getting to where you are today. And you've helped create this, but we've also had a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. Do you like being part of that, or would you rather be in that mature, like civil engineering or another field that's been around, and it's a more, obvious path to get to where you are today?
I love the formation of things, but I can only tolerate it. I can only tolerate chaos just so long. So I have to be part of actually establishing something that's going to stay and stick.
Yeah.
I can't, right now, this frenzy on Gen AI and ChatGPT, people are like, what's your position? Why aren't you out there on social media? And I'm like, because I'm not getting in the frenzy. Yeah. I'm not going to add to the noise. I'm going to be part. I mean, most people listening to this probably never used an actual radio, where you tune the frequency to the station, but look it up on Google if you don't know what I'm talking about. But I want to be part of tuning the frequency on this topic, not adding more noise. So to your point, I just get to the point where I'm like, all right, I'll observe, I'll ask a lot of questions, but then I'm going to come out with a way that we can actually start simplifying this and giving people a mental model to process their thoughts on it versus think about all the conversations that are going on right now. Everything's going on around Gen AI. How many of those people you think really understand what the hell they're talking about?
That's hard. This is hard stuff, right? And
it is.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. And you're right. So I think the ones that really are in the know on the data side or different things, we're taking that step back because it is hard for us to sound informed about this. I mean, behind the scenes, I'm taking courses. I'm watching more videos and reading more than I ever have. And the more I read, the more I realize I don't know as much as I thought I did.
But that's the place that we want more people to get to, is that place where you're like, oh, I actually don't know. Because I think this goes to your point. There's too many people that know exactly what's going on here, and it is unknowable. Because we're the way I describe it is like we're, if we're trying to look 5 years down the road, we may know what next year looks like, and each year is a different node. But there's going to be so much change between this year and next year that whatever everything looks like the year after that is drastically different, so much so that in 5 years we may not understand, or we may not be able to comprehend how the world works, because things are about to change so quickly, or things are changing so quickly. And I feel like leaning hard into, to your point, leaning hard into expertise is kind of hard right now, because sure, there are AI experts, but there's no AI experts in sociology and things like that are really able to comprehend what we're into. But that's our approach, is more just talk about it as it's going on. Mm-hmm.
I love that the way that you're coming at it for the podcast. I really do. I think it's so aligned with my intention to simplify this and to make it for the everyday,
I love
everyday people, right? And with your podcast, I included it with, I do a weekly newsletter for my community of data literacy people, and I'm like, go check out this podcast, because what you've done, I don't know if you realized you did this, but several of your episodes are actually perfect examples of the dialect of the language. So you have one, I think, on bourbon and data.
Yes,
yeah,
we do.
Let's not bring that. Why are we talking about that one?
Oh, that's his favorite one. Why was that your favorite one, Charlie? We like to practice what we preach, so maybe we were practicing during that one.
I was practicing hard. I do.
No,
I practice hard, play hard, and that's
a good way of thinking. The dialects, the data in nutrition, data in media.
What was your point you were getting into with that awesome episode that was the data one or the bourbon one?
Yeah, I had a break in the audio there, guys.
Oh, that's my bad. That's my bad.
He's playing with his earbuds on the side there. Also, just in case we are, you may hear lightning and thunder. Well, you might hear the thunder, not hear the lightning.
I heard something.
Yeah, and that's on our end, and we're just gonna play it out. And so if we ended up having to stop, it's because we're right in a storm here. So we'll do our best. Of course, we got the amazing Jeremy, our audio engineer, to help us with that. But I don't know if you can get that out.
Good.
But you were saying, so what's an example of the dialect that you were getting at? Because I'm interested because if there's something that we need to promote, I want to go that direction.
So within ISL, the way that I talk about this is, all right, first help people understand the basic vocabulary structure of any discussion of using data. Mm-hmm. And I have this little triangle, and it's called the VIA model. The V is at the top, then the I, then the A. V is value. What are you trying to, what risk are you mitigating? What growth are you driving? What efficiency you're driving? Yeah. What information's involved? And then what analysis method is being applied to that data? So that's the basic frame mental model for any discussion of using data. But then that gets contextualized back to the definition of in context. That gets contextualized by industry vertical. Mm-hmm. So hospital data literacy, clinical data literacy, telco data literacy, and then it gets contextualized by business domain. So the audit profession is going through a whole bunch of change right now because they're moving from sampling to availability of big data, right? So big change. Yeah. So audit, data literacy for auditors. So that is what I mean by the dialects is, data literacy for urban, connoisseurs. Ooh, I heard the thunder.
He jumped in it. I jumped because he jumped. That's in the video. It was right on top of us, though. Wow. There you go. Valerie, I think that's a really good point because a lot of times, Charlie, being the practitioner and then me being the academic, he a lot of times says, well, I'm not really a data guy. No, you are in your dialect, right? Yes. You know data in your discipline, in your industry. That's your dialect. It's different than mine, right? And so I talk in a different language a lot of times. And so he may not know the same words, if I'm saying something. But then when he'll be talking, it can be a little bit foreign to me. But we do have a shared vocabulary for sure. Yeah. But so, I think that's really spot on. And so you can almost tell people, it's like you have a data superpower, but it's in your dialect. And yes. I think that's a really good point. That to me is inspiring. That's something that people can, again, this idea of literacy is, like you said, you're already you're not illiterate, yes. And you can be better, but you're already halfway there. You're already, you just need that nudge to be aware of it and appreciate it a lot of times. And, I'll use the silliest example. You use food, and I love food. We talk about it all the time on the podcast. But, I'm going to go out to dinner with my wife. I use data. I don't just randomly drive to a restaurant and hope it's good. That's because he's a picky eater, though.
I am a picky eater, and I love my data. And yes, I got to make sure they have one vegetarian meal on that menu, but which normally they don't. But at least not in the Nashville area. So I love that. And well, I wanna throw it at you, Valerie. We've had a great conversation, and like this has been a conversation. What are some of your thoughts that you have? Why are you laughing now?
It definitely has been a conversation.
It has been a conversation.
It has, right? It's been amazing.
You're laughing at the obvious, as opposed to an interview. What are some of your thoughts or topics you'd like to bring up, either about what you do or about this conversation?
Yeah, I guess first off, I think it's important to look at this topic in context of where we're at in its evolution. I still think we're in the first few years of probably a 10 to 15 year change movement. And I do think that this is a movement. Secondly, I do think that there are organizations who are pioneers in this and are going to benefit from having done this work, hard work. So, one of the organizations that talks publicly, Dow, has done a custom boot camp with me where they put 17 people in a boot camp, a train the trainer boot camp, where they are seeding this change movement around speaking data across the organization. So it's not just the data function. They're saying, you know what, we need to, it's a large organization with a lot of people. So I think those pioneers who have the leadership support and take this seriously, I think they're going to leapfrog because they have. I heard somebody the other day frame it as we're rewiring the social circuitry of organizations.
Yeah,
that's powerful, right? Language,
I
culture.
love that.
I think pioneers, but then at the other end of that, there's the procrastinators, and there's people that are really just not paying any attention to this right now. And it's like, it's not going to solve itself on its own, people, right? Yeah. You have to do some kind of an intervention on this, and you can do it gritty and you can do it grassroots and get something going, but do something, right? Yeah. Secondly, the whole world of Gen AI, I think we really have to help people tune that frequency to understand what is the basic construct of a conversation around Gen AI.
Yeah.
Because right now it's just all kinds of dialects being spun around, all kinds of terms. And I think right now people are really afraid to admit they don't understand it. Well, they really don't understand what's being talked about. And then the third thing is, I would just say, at the end of the day, any change starts with people and being personal. And I have individuals who have started these efforts in their organizations locally, and they're building out kind of this little movement without top-down support. So I would just say to you, it's kind of like have you guys ever shopped for a red car, bought a red car, and then all of a sudden you're driving, you see red cars everywhere?
Yeah.
I hope that this episode is the red car phenomenon. I hope people now will start thinking, okay, there are a certain set of terms, there is context, there is a mindset, and you can start to take that and have a frame for this, because without that, it's just noise, and certain people are going to win and certain people are going to be left behind.
Yeah, I like
those are kind of some key things.
I like the analogy when you were talking earlier about seeing the world through data tinted glasses. And I feel like that's appropriate because you don't have to be the expert, but you do have to know that the things you do generate data. And how, if you can, how do you harness that data, and what can it tell you in just very basic terms? And if we get to a point to where everybody's there, then it just feels like we're going to advance a lot more smoothly than we would otherwise. Because right now we're poised to where we can roll like a wheel or we can roll like a square. And it feels like we haven't really decided yet.
Yeah, for sure. And in thinking of just, you kind of mentioned this, would be the procrastinators. And I have a whole theory on why people procrastinate. A lot of times it's in academia, it's because people are close to retirement and they just want it to stay the same. But the truth is people just like things to stay the same. And so ignoring change makes you feel like, and then all of a sudden another year goes by or another month and another month. And so, but to kind of, just, you don't have to give examples, but we do want names. Where are you seeing where people do go wrong? If your organization is going to want to go down this path to become more data literate, or a person, where do you see? And I know you mentioned senior leadership, can really be an issue, but
Yeah, so first of all, where things go wrong is when they over-index on how do I say this? They over-index on the focus on just training. So when this is branded as only training, that is going to give an image of, oh, well, we can cut it, because training often gets cut. So I think the training, over-indexing on training is too much, and also not being intentional on what do you even mean by data literacy and why it matters. If you don't start there and get really crystal clear, you're going to chase your tail. Can you guys hear me? You guys are frozen. I'm going to wait for you guys.
Well, dadgum.
Could anything else happen today?
Do what?
The Wasp landing.
Oh, yeah.
You guys
that thunder's coming right after you talking trash.
I'm here. I never went anywhere.
Yeah.
We lost power.
Yeah, it flickered.
I figured.
It flickered, and that was enough to kill the internet.
All right. Well, I'm just gonna start back up as if you finished your nice monologue. I would love to keep going, but I'm going to assume the worst. We've got a couple of minutes because we're still hearing things, and according to Jeremy, it's really windy. So I'm gonna do a little bit of thinking, but I would love final thoughts on what you're doing next. What are some things in the future for you and the Data Lodge, if you want to go there. That sound good?
Yeah. So the Data Lodge is rocking. We are at full capacity. No, I don't want to say that. That's not a good thing to say. So at the Data Lodge, we are definitely doubling down on the next chapter. We've been going for 4 years now in August, and given 3 years at Gartner and 4 years here on data literacy, I can't believe I've been at this for 7 years. So we are at a point where we have 65 people in our community of data literacy professionals. We're the only ones certifying data literacy program leads, and we now have 65 people in our peer community from 6 countries and industries from, the largest global manufacturers all the way to local nonprofits, including government and education. So where we're going is we are expanding our online Basecamp recordings. We are building out, continuing to fill our cohort boot camps for the train the trainer, and then we're picking custom boot camps as we need. But you could definitely see some stuff from us on demystifying and clarifying the Gen AI topic so that we can help people tune that frequency.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of practical things to learn about it that would help in the immediate future, but then there's a lot of settling down that people need to do as well.
Yeah, and I love this idea of creating those, I'll call them data champions, those people out there that aren't just, telling you the book knowledge part of it, but obviously also speaking the gospel kind of its importance and being enlightened a little bit. I do think that. So Charlie, any final thoughts on your end?
No, I like that you're taking the standardized approach, the standardized the things approach, because that's the foundation that we can build this all up on and get it built up faster. And so instead of 10 to 15 years, it could be 5 to 8, and then we're off doing better and more awesome things.
Yeah. And
thanks for that. And, and it's not just me setting the standard, it's me working with all of these clients who are constantly challenging and vetting and sharing their experience. So it's really a body of work that's coming out of the community.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, any final thoughts, any things that you'd like to share? We know that we can find you. It is, give us the website. I was about ready to say it, and I think I know it, but I would let you do it.
www.thedatalodge.com. Pretty easy.
Excellent.
And I would just encourage, I think my final comment would be, if you can't necessarily join a boot camp and kind of go double down with me, I created this thing called Basecamp, which is a easy way, pre-recorded. If you need to just build the case for change to get funding for a data literacy program, go take my Basecamp. It's a lower cost offer, and it's the whole reason it's there.
Yeah.
Excellent. I love what you're doing, and have been following basically since I saw you back in 2021. By the way, can you move your head just a little bit to the left?
Oh yeah.
Just go. Yeah, everybody, you got to see that. So I did get clarification. I am the Charlie that's higher than the other Charlie on there. If you can't tell,
no, you got to look at the scores. Okay. You know what? I got to tally the scores on the two Charlies.
That definitely would be the differentiator. And he called the top, so he can have the top, and then I'll take the.
All right. So do you know the scores already of which one?
You know what? I'm such a big Scrabble player. I can tell you that the upper Charlie's going to have to be the higher score.
Yeah.
Just
sorry. It's because it's on a double word. It's on a pink double word.
Your A is on something that doesn't. Like, it's not very much either, anyways.
Well, but let's just we have put the gauntlet down. One Charlie's higher than the other, according to the Scrabble board, and we really appreciate that. Valerie, thank you so much for taking the time today and talking about what is obviously near and dear to our heart, which is data in general, data literacy, and we can't thank you enough for your time today.
Were you
you guys are the real deal, and I think you're doing really important work to get the word out, and thank you so much for having me. And I just realized Charlie is a 7-letter word, 50 bonus points. So, just saying.
There you go. Charlie, last parting shots, last chance?
No.
That's good.
I had something, but then I forgot it. Oh, yeah. Are you going to be at the Analytics Summit, or was that just a one-time thing?
Not going to be there this time. I would love to come out next year. I am going to be in Nashville, I think in November. So if anybody's around, I can try to make a visit.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I love hearing that. We will make that happen. Or I have to entice you to come down for something else. Maybe the Data for All conference. We just need to start that, I think. That there you go. That's a little teaser. Well, again, thank you so much, Valerie, for your time today. We really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. This is obviously a topic everybody should be talking about, everybody embracing. And for that, I'm Charlie Apigian.
And I'm Charlie Yielding.
And until next time.
Good job.
I finished it too. He's happy. It usually takes me like 25 minutes to do that last little bit. So.
In my head, I was like 50-50. He's going to ask me again.
There's this thing I say, any parting shots, and then he told me one time, he goes, you said that 3 times. I said, no, I only said it twice. I went back, and it was 3 times, and I did make that part of a video.